you interrupted me.
Would you say that you and other members of the National Assembly are still robbing Nigerians? Has anything changed?
I will not use the same language again.
Why?
I'll tell you.
Engaging interviews with key stakeholders in various sectors.
I'm going to take this question to you now. All of these happening, is it true that this is a ploy to cut the influence of...
You asking me that question?
Yes.
No, please don't use that kind of language. Please, do not insult me. Okay, I'm not insulting you.
Is your government owing contractors the way it is?
How would I know? You send me to go and work in Abuja, I'm a senator in Abuja, I'm not a member of this thing.
Has it achieved what it was meant to achieve, sir?
No, we are not in position. I'm not in position to say that.
You know, but you had members on
the part is not...
You are representatives on
The question you are asking.
It is Frank Talk, quality talk, taking it from all angles, policy and politics, played out by our politicians and policy makers.
Join me, Femi Olanipekun, your host on Frank Talk, 9 to 10 a.m. every weekday on Rave 91.7 FM, where we have frank discussions and give you quality talk. Always.
Let's turn it up.
Relax and unwind because we're going live.
91.7 Wave FM.
Hello, good morning, and thank you very much for sticking with us right here on the amazing radio of choice, Rave 91.7 FM. My name is Femi Olanipekun. Welcome to Frank Talk. Thank you so much for being a part of our world again this morning. On Frank Talk, we look at trending issues in the polity, bringing the issues closer to you and helping you to have a better understanding and have a deeper insight into the issues that we look at right here, issues that affect you and I as individuals and also collectively as a nation. Today, the National Assembly will be holding a public hearing on the controversial NGO bill. It's a bill introduced sometimes last year by a member of the House of Representatives to regulate the activities of non-governmental organizations in the country. Well, the NGO people have been up in arms against that particular bill, saying it's meant to stifle public opinion, it's meant to stifle freedom of association and stifle other people's rights. Well, but then the proponents of the bill have said it is necessary in the interest of the security of this country and also to manage and to watch the activities of these NGOs. Some of the proponents of the bill are saying some of them are involved in terrorism and terrorism financing, and saying that, well, now it's just a time to manage them. And so saying that, well, there's some sort of corruption within that particular sector. It's been on and off for some time now, but then the public hearing is taking place today, and then many NGOs, international organizations, both national and international organizations, have been saying, well, it should not go. The NGO Regulatory Commission bill, the public hearing is stated for today and tomorrow, and it's generated controversies after some Nigerians, including the former chairman of the National Human Rights Commission, Professor Chidiodin Kalu, opposed it on the grounds that it's aimed at Muslim NGOs and also CSOs. Well, Some people have also supported it, especially members of the House of Representatives, saying it is necessary and that the NGOs should not blackmail them into stopping on this one, saying they are not going to stop. So they've moved ahead, and then the public hearing is going to take place today. Members of the House Committee on Non-Governmental Organizations and Civil Society Organizations inviting stakeholders to make presentations on the alleged contentious bill on the NGOs today. Well, I'm joining the studio this morning to look at this particular matter and why the NGOs are particularly not comfortable with government being some kind of searchlight on their activities. I'm joined in the studio by a strong member of the NGO community right here in Osun State. He's Executive Director of Kimpact Development Initiative, Mr. Bukola Idowu. Thank you so much for joining us on Frank Talk this morning.
Thank you so much for having me. Good morning, everyone.
Thank you. And we'll be joined live on the line shortly by Mr. Isa Sanusi. He's the spokesman of Amnesty International here in Nigeria. They've spoken passionately about this. As a matter of fact, Amnesty is saying Nigerians have just 24 hours to stop the NGO bill. Some people said that's like raising a false alarm, and Amnesty International is warning that failure by Nigerians to rise against the proposed law to regulate activities of civil society organizations could have devastating effects. We ask him why the AI is raising this kind of alarm, and also we'll be speaking later on the program to the Executive Director of One Live Initiative, another NGO, Mr. Shalafa Gurusi. Will be joining us also live on the line, and also we'll be speaking to a lawyer, Mr. Mesbah Latif, to get a legal hang on this particular matter. But let's get started now with Mr. Bukola Idowu. This bill was introduced last year. It has tracked on up till now. Why are the NGOs, including yourself, so passionately opposed to the bill? What's wrong with the bill?
Well, this is a bill that seeks to regulate the activities of the NGO in the country. Well, there is nothing bad when you are trying to regulate the activities of the NGO. It's normal. But when we begin to look at some sections and paragraphs from that proposed bill, which are they call for questioning, they are worrying, and these are the things that we begin to look at and say, look, this is not really good for us. For instance, now, what part of the bill says, I mean, what it was written in the bill, proposed bill, one of them is that we have to re-register again. NGO, we have to re-register again, and with another commission that will be set up. That is also included in the bill, like another commission that will be set up.
Like an NGO regulatory commission.
NGO regulatory commission, who will now oversee the activities of the NGO. So most times now, you now have to travel to Abuja to the commission to seek permission to even run your own initiative, to run your interventions, and to run some of your activity. Now, it become a criminal offense if you are embarking on any activity that the commission has not sanctioned. So we now begin to look at some things around this, and we feel this is not really good. Number two, this is a bill that is likely going to guard and then tighten and stiffen the civic space. For instance, now, the beauty of democracy is when the civic space is being open to everybody to participate. Not only, not only being vocal as against speaking against the government, because there are other NGOs that speak against the government just to put the government on their toes. And that is not only what the NGO does. But when you look at this bill from a myopic point of view and say, look, because these people have been speaking against the government, let's guard them. What about the NGOs that have not been speaking against the government? NGOs that have been moving into a lot of interventions, like there are a lot of initiatives during the flood, during helping the IDPs and a whole lot of them like that. So they are all NGOs. There are a lot of NGOs that, for instance, there are a lot of NGOs that go into the educational sector and build schools, help students. There are a lot of projects, Project Read, a whole lot of projects that help people. So when you are trying to guard the civic space, you are going to reduce that intervention. And don't forget, government alone cannot provide most of these things.
Well, I see here some people saying, well, in all of these, I don't see any reason why government should not aim to regulate the NGO, saying, well, there's absolutely nothing wrong in managing the activities of individuals and organizations who deal with sometimes foreign sponsors.
Okay, now let's start from the definition of an NGO. Okay. An NGO is a non-governmental organization. Let's take that. Non-governmental organization. Regulating that activity becomes a governmental organization. It's no longer a non-governmental organization. What we are trying to do now is that the moment you are being regulated by a government, is no longer non-governmental organization.
Do we now leave the NGOs to just operate as they
that
wish
is the question.
without regulation?
That is the question we keep receiving every time.
Okay.
And the answer to this is, look, most times when we have an issue in this country, we try to institutionalize the issue and then make it to live with us perpetually. This is what I mean. When we have the issue of corruption, there has been an existing body, the Nigerian police, where they are statutorily responsible to fight corruption. But what did we do? We institutionalize corruption and begin to set up EFCC and ICPC.
But
to now say, now this is what I'm trying to say. Don't forget, even in the Nigerian police, there is a financial crime unit that investigate most of these things. Now, what I'm trying to say is that, do we need another body to regulate NGO? As it is today, we have 3 bodies regulating NGOs in this country.
Which are those bodies?
CAC.
The Corporate Affairs Commission.
Corporate Affairs Commission. Now, you can't set up an NGO in Nigeria today without the CAC approval. CAC have to approve you. They check your aims and objectives. They look at your constitution. Then they publish it in the newspaper for people for 21 days. For people to come up, and they publish the name of even of your trustees. For people to come out and look, this is what this NGO claim to be. Any member of the public who have contrary opinion about their activity and about the status of the board of trustees should speak within 21 days. Now, if nobody speaks up, and then what is the next thing? Then the CAC, Corporate Affairs Commission, will give permission. We legalize that operation. That is one. So, which means you can't even set up an NGO in Nigeria without going through the CAC. That is one regulatory body. Number 2, we have EFCC, also regulating NGO. People don't even know. EFCC in conjunction with the security, money trafficking and security agency like that. If I get the right name, I will. Now, because how? As an NGO in Nigeria today, you can't open a bank account without getting what we call SCUMUL certificate. To get your SCUMUL certificate, it has to be from the EFCC, which means they have to be sure. For instance, when I want to get my for our organization, they look at our registration document. They went to CAC, they did their investigation to be sure that this NGO is genuine, and most of the funds coming in are coming in from a genuine angle. You understand? And at the same time, the bank also have the responsibility to report to the EFCC or any appointing authority about the fund, suspicious fund. For instance, now if in our account you just find $3 million, they have the responsibility to respond, to report. That is through this SCUMUL mandate.
Okay.
Now look at all those regulatory bodies. What do we need another one for?
But I mean, I get a sense that all this regulation, both from the CAC to the EFCC to the banks and to the SCUMUL, are only at the level, at the beginning, at the foundation.
Okay.
Who regulates activities of NGOs when they begin to implement their activities?
Now, that is why it is non-governmental organization. What activity and which activity do you want to do as an NGO that you still don't need the government approval? Let me cite an example.
Okay.
For instance, I know 4, 5, 6, 7. I can count even 10 at my fingertip. NGOs that deal with relief material, supply of relief material, capacity development, skill acquisition, and a whole lot of things for the IDPs. Now, and you and I know you can't get into the IDP camp without the approval of the government. Even, don't forget, activity in the IDP camp is even directly under the Secretary of the Federal Government. You understand? So you see, the regulation are there. For instance, during the election, we were so active and we participated in what is it called? Civic education and voters education. You can't do this You can't even partner and say you want to act on behalf of INEC without their approval. They will investigate you. Now, don't forget, one of the areas where NGOs have been very active is election monitoring and election observation. And don't forget, on the newspaper, like about 30 days, 40 days, or 60 days to the election, names of approved NGOs that will observe election will be published in the newspaper. Approved. Now, you apply, and then INEC will do their investigation and approve you. Now, to the extent that most of those approval also at times go through the DSS to be sure that these people are really genuine. So what is it? Those activities are being regulated.
So you think there is no basis whatsoever for this new bill?
The reason why we feel this bill is not in good faith is this. When this administration, before the inception of this administration rode on the back of the civil society to power. But when they came in, don't forget, people already forgot Occupy Nigeria, done by civil society. Now, at the end of the day, the administration came into power. What do they want to do? The first step they want to take was to guard the social media space. If you remember, a lot of people make noise and said, no, you can't regulate the social media, for God's sake. Now, the next thing they now fall back on is on the NGO. It is totally uncalled for. And what we are saying is this. Instead of setting up another commission, don't forget there was this Steve Oronsoye. Thank you. Oronsoye commission, committee that recommends to the federal government that we have a lot of parastatals and MDA, and was talking about, can we merge some of them because there were too many. Now, regulations, those kind of recommendations were not being implemented, but what the present House of Assembly were doing is to keep creating more and more and more commission. What do we need to do, if you ask me? Can we strengthen the existing regulatory body? Do you know by law, an NGO, you are meant to file a return, you are meant to file your return to the Federal Inland Revenue Services. That is by law. So can we begin to strengthen most of the regulatory body to do their job? For instance, now, even I can mention a lot of organizations, including mine, that have been investigated by DSS. For instance, they have the right to jump in and say, look, we suspect something is going on here. How do you get your fund? What is this for? Why are you doing this? So can we strengthen the existing regulatory body instead of building another one and saying, okay, look, can we begin to have another commission to do that? I think we need to strengthen the existing regulatory bodies.
Okay, well, we'll be joined live on the line. We're joined live on the line now by Issa Sanusi, is a spokesman of Amnesty International right here in Nigeria. Thank you so much for joining us on Frank Talk this morning on Rave 91.7 FM. Issa Sanusi.
Yeah, thank you for having me
this
morning.
All right. Well, this issue about the NGO bill, Amnesty International raised an alarm. Some people have described it as a false alarm, saying that Nigerians have just 24 hours to stop that bill. Why is Amnesty so passionate about this bill? The proponents have said it is necessary to ensure that, we get things right in that particular sector in this country.
Well, we actually have to make that kind of statement because if you look at the Nigerian laws and institutions, one can rightly and with all evidence say that NGOs are over-regulated in Nigeria. You ought to be in the NGO sector, civil society sector, to know that there are so many institutions, so many processes that you have to go through to get an NGO going in Nigeria already. But now, what they are trying to do is actually going to be giving a single person the power to determine which NGO should operate on Nigeria. And we consider this to be against the Constitution of Nigeria and against international laws, and it will create the kind of power in the hands of the government that will make it very difficult for Nigerians to exercise a lot of their freedoms guaranteed by Nigerian Constitution.
Well, the proponents are saying that this bill is designed to sanitize the activities of the CSOs and the NGOs as it is done in other climes. What is wrong, with regulating the activities of the NGOs in Nigeria?
Well, no one is against regulation. You have to be working with an NGO to know that, if every sector of Nigerian life will be as organized as the NGO sector, Nigeria will definitely be a better place. What we are saying, actually, no one is against regulation. If you look at every sector in Nigeria is regulated: electricity, telecommunication, everything is regulated. Which of these things is actually functioning well despite all the regulations, all the regulatory commissions? They only created what one can call a new level of bureaucracy that warranted corruption and gave power to only one single person. Let me give you an example. If you look at the telecommunication sector, at a point, Nigerians have been complaining about poor service. But, we have a regulator, but the regulator could not do anything. So what we are saying is that if Nigerian government is at all sincere, bringing sanity to every sector of the country, they have to first of all sanitize themselves, make the government, functional, clean, ensure that there is justice among Nigerians. And I think that is the first thing that they should have done. But what we actually perceive is a pattern in Africa. So many countries have done this. When a government or some powerful people want to prevent some human rights organizations from doing their work, or some NGOs from doing their work, they will now start creating this kind of institution. But why were they called non-governmental organizations? Why is government so interested in their work? They are called non-governmental organizations, although they are not an alternative to the government, but they are providing a service that, by having this bill in place in Nigeria, many NGOs will leave, and the government is not in the position to provide the kind of services in education, in health sector, in social services, in agriculture that these NGOs have been providing.
Well, in that statement, you talked about this bill being capable of shrinking the freedom of Nigerians. You talked about that the bill will have devastating effect on Nigerians, which is why the government is trying to pass it as quickly as possible. I'm wondering, in what ways will it shrink the freedom of Nigerians?
For example, the bill said that, as an NGO, if you want to conduct a research, or for example, if you want to construct a village in Ocean State, if you want to do that, you have to seek the permission of a ministry of Nigerian government. So, if, for example, at villages, there are so many NGOs providing water to Nigerians that the government could not do, and you need the permission of someone in the ministry who is sitting in Abuja to do that. Just imagine what will happen to poor and ordinary Nigerians who are living in the countryside. And imagine a situation whereby the Minister of Interior was given the power by that bill to cancel the registration of any NGO, on his own discretion. So if, for example, the minister doesn't like you, or someone in government doesn't like you, you can wake up and say, okay, I have banned this NGO from operating. And for example, they are saying that, under this bill, an NGO has to be submitting, it has to be renewing its license every 2 years. Just imagine that. Just imagine what it will take to be renewing your license. How many hundreds? Nigeria is a big country. So even if it's, for example, that you said NGOs have to be renewing the license, does the government have the resources, the skills, the financial wherewithal to ensure that this is done smoothly so that it will not harm the activities of NGOs? For example, how long will it take you to register an NGO under this bill? Is something that will affect the freedom of Nigerians to associate, to come together in the interest of the public.
Well, Mr. Sanusi, I'm sure you must have heard about, complaints, insinuations, some quarters that there is a lot of corruption going on within the NGO, especially in that particular industry. And then there's also insinuations by proponents of this bill that some of the ties the NGOs in Nigeria have to their foreign sponsors, but are sometimes on security implications for this country. Aren't those enough genuine reasons to actually take a look into activities of these organizations?
Yeah. If you talk about security, don't we have, anti-terrorism law already in place? Don't we have anti-money laundering law in place? What is the use of these laws, if at all? The government is there and is claiming that some NGOs have security implication, or they are aiding and abetting. They're aiding and abetting terrorism. Anti-money laundering law is supposed to check and make sure that no one launder any kind of finances into Nigeria. What is the use of other laws and other institutions that are meant to check all these things? So if already we have the anti-money laundering law, we have the EFCC, and still some people, or as they claim, some NGOs are bringing money from abroad to aid terrorism. So what gives you reason that this commission will be able to provide the kind of check that they claim they want to provide? We already have so many laws. It's just like terrorism. When the terrorism law comes into place, it takes care of everything about finances, about everything. So if at all we have these institutions and these laws already existed, and we still haven't to have a commission, so what is the point?
Well, since June last year, when this bill first came to the public, it has been lots of controversies and, huge outcry against it. But it has not died down up till now as we speak. Do you think government or the sponsors of this bill will back down?
Well, even if they back down, I think this bill is not in there, and is going to paint Nigeria in bad light across the world. Nations are giving space for the public, for the people to express themselves, to associate with whoever they like, to pursue any interest they like. For example, if they brought this bill, the implication is that even religious institutions will be affected. So many religious organizations, both Christianity and Islam, have charities, and they will have to go through the same process.
But they are claiming, they've insisted time and again that churches and mosques are not affected, but not even included in this.
If you read the bill, you will know that this is only a trick. This is only a diversionary, an attempt to hide something that is quite clear. What is an NGO? If at all the definition of NGO in that bill is what it is, then it will be a very big deception for anyone to believe that, religious organizations will not be affected.
All right. Well, thank you very much for speaking with us this morning, Mr. Issa Sanusi, the spokesman of Amnesty International right here in Nigeria. Thank you so much. We wish you the best.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so
much.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye. Yeah, bye-bye.
All right. Mr. Sanusi joined us live on the line from Abuja. We're weighing in on this matter and saying, well, as it is, it will shrink the freedom of Nigerians, and we have negative consequences on the image of the country if the bill sails trust. Yeah, Mr. Bukola Idowu right here with me in the studio. We'll be joining Mr. Shalafa Gurusi shortly. He's the executive director of One Live Initiative. Well, efforts to get a reaction of the National Assembly as of now has not been really successful, but then we hope that we can get their own side to this particular story now. Let me get back to Mr. Idowu. You heard what Amnesty spokesman was saying about this, but then the concerns of security, is a very huge one, especially since most of the NGOs moved down to the northeast to support activities of IDPs, and humanitarian efforts. But then some people will say it is not something to be wished away when we talk about security implications. Maybe there are security reports that really necessitated government or the private person who introduced this bill introducing it in the first place.
Well, you are right by saying that the security of this country is something that should be paramount to any government. But the truth is this: let's ask ourselves genuinely, are the NGOs really a security threat to this government?
Now, I should ask you, are they security threat to this government?
They are not. They are not. For instance, we have seen NGO spending their own money to do capacity development for security agencies. I don't want to start mentioning names. Capacity development. We have seen NGOs in this country donating communication equipment to security agencies. We have seen NGOs helping the IDPs. I know an NGO that set up virtual classrooms, virtual schools. Mobile classrooms in the IDP camp. Government has not been able to do that. NGO has been doing that. Now, so we now begin to ask ourselves, what is the purpose of this be? Probably there must be another reason behind the reason they are giving. Now, you heard the spokesperson of Amnesty International saying something that as of today, NGOs in Nigeria are even well overregulated. We are more overregulated, even more than Britain, even the US. You understand? So what we are looking at is that, for instance, now, for me to set up my NGO, apart from scaling through CAC, I have EFCC to battle. I have even the state government of where I am to battle. Don't forget, even with all our national certificate, which is CAC recognized, you still have to register with the state.
But isn't that also what happens to business interests when you want to register your business concerns? Isn't that the same process?
That is now, who regulates the business? The businesses, who regulates them? You understand? Who regulates them? Now you have people regulating them. EFCC regulates. EFCC can look at the source of funding, can look at your activity. What is it called? CAC. You can deregister you. Federal Inland Revenue Service can look at your tax record and say, look, you are penalized. You are a lot of people, even the state government of where you are, the local government, you are responsible to all of them. Now, can we strengthen most of these things? Let me say something again. You know, we are so curious about this. They told us that churches and mosques are not included, but they were still giving a definition in that proposed bill that also include, that does not separate the churches and the mosque. So you can imagine, because as of today, the same process of registering an NGO is the same process of registering the church or the mosque in Nigeria as of today. Now, because they are also non-governmental organizations, can you imagine where you have money in the mosque and you still have, or in the church, you have to contact Abuja on how you are going to spend your money? Now, these are personal donations from people, and nobody is stopping you from asking questions. You can ask questions.
Well, you know, the issue of corruption is a pervasive one in the Nigerian society, and there are people who believe that the NGOs, the civil society space, is one of the most corrupt in the country. They're saying, even if for that reason there should be some sort of regulation, they say huge sums of money come into the CSO space, but then the way it's spent or managed is not particularly regulated. It's susceptible to mismanagement. Isn't that a reason also?
That is an interesting question.
Unregulated activities.
I like that. Okay. And the question, my answer is this too. I've been hacked several times. Now, I will answer it in 3 ways. Number one, they want to regulate the NGO. And when I was able to meet one of the honorables, and I asked, excuse me, you are trying to regulate the NGO. I agreed, but who regulates the National Assembly? We should first of all ask ourselves that question. Because the same thing you are trying to do to NGO because you don't trust them, are you really even saying Nigeria trust you? So who regulates you? Up to today, most of these people, we don't even know how much they earn.
But they say two wrongs don't make it right.
Two wrongs don't make it right.
If they are not regulated, does that mean we should not regulate NGOs also on that basis?
Now, I agree. You understand? And the response of the same person to me is that, look, EFCC can come and pick anybody up. The police can come, and he gave an example of the Senate president who was facing trial then at the
CCT.
You understand? Now, and I asked the question. Now, who have stopped EFCC, police from investigating an NGO? And he couldn't say anything. Why duplication? That is number one way I will answer. Then number two is this. When you keep talking about corruption and lack of accountability. Now, can I ask you a question? Femi, if I don't give you any money, can I come and ask you to account for something I don't give you? That is the question here. NGOs are responsible and accountable to their donors. That is the question.
So you think government has no moral rights to look into their finances?
They have the right to look at the finances, but that does not mean we are accountable to them. For instance, let me put it this way. Look at it this way. Now, I want to cite myself as an example now. There was a time I got a fund to run an FGM initiative. Now, that fund was reported to the EFCC by the virtue of our SCUMUL account, and I was called. I tendered it. Okay, this is where the fund was coming from. This is it, and that was all. That was all. Now, the next form of accountability was when the project was conducted, and then we conclude the project. Do you know the next thing? You have to account for how you spend all those money that has been budgeted for. So you account for everything to your donor who gave you the money. That is number one. And number two, for corporate governance sake, every NGO are mandated by law to file return and do their reports. So the reports can be called for by anybody. You have to. It's just like a company doing its annual report. So you have to do that. We just finished our own. Auditors came to do that. Now, and then this is going to be in the public space. So what we are now trying to say is this. Now, for instance, what was so funny, unannounced, we just had visitors in our office, unannounced, from outside the country, coming from the donor agency. Coming from the donor agency to come and validate our report. Okay, you say you use the money for this. Can we see this? Can we see this? They gave us money. They asked us to account for it. Number two, now if you are doing any intervention, the government can say, look, what are you doing here? What do you want to do here? Depending on which area you are moving into. So, okay, fine. This and this and this and this and this. And they can even put, for instance now, even common CSR. You understand? Common CSR. You can't even do CSR without even taking permission. Can I go to Kefia now and say, look, I want to do a billboard here that will be some... I still have to take permission. And that is what it means.
So you think there's a level of checks and balances in the system already? Already. There are a lot of checks and balances, a lot. So coming with this, we believe there is a reason behind every reason. Okay, well, let's get the legal perspective of a lawyer on this particular bill. Some of the NGOs have taken government to court on this matter, and like I said earlier on, it's today and tomorrow. That's for the public hearing at the National Assembly. But let's see what the law makes of this bill. Some have said it's going to stifle the rights of Nigerians and stifle freedom of speech and what have you. We are joined live on the line from the University Town of Ile-Ife by Mr. Misbah Lateef. He's a lawyer and a lecturer in the Faculty of Law of Femi University Ile-Ife. Thank you so much for joining us on Frank this morning, sir.
Yeah, Femi, how are you? Thank you. Good morning.
Thank you. Well, this NGO bill has been causing some ruckus in the public space for some time. Since last year, it has not died down. The public hearing is today and tomorrow. The NGOs have been up in arms against that bill. I mean, they said it has the potential to stifle public, freedom of people and their rights in the country. I don't know if you've seen it. What do you make of that bill? Do you think it will do that in reality?
Yeah, well, I would say it would depend on the perspectives. And this is where I want to say Nigerians should be very cautious. Yes, I have read a portion of the bill, and I've also followed the debate. And I can say to some extent that if it is not well managed, it could stifle or restrict, right of Nigerians to, freedom as guaranteed under Section 38, Section 39 and 40 of the Constitution. But then, you can also look at it from another perspective. I mean, looking at the status or conditions of NGOs generally in Nigeria, can we say they are entitled to be regulated? If the answer is yes, then to what extent should they be regulated? And in these regulations, issues of rights, freedom, expression, and all of that would normally arise. So that is why I said normally for me, it will be difficult to generally, to use a common balance. Say let us, it is a bad something, let us throw it away, throwing everything away. I want us to look at everything, in the larger picture. And my own approach or attitude, therefore, is that we need to regulate the NGOs. NGOs ordinarily are supposed to be not for profit, are supposed to carry out humanitarian activities, and I would say a number of them are doing that. But then a number of them have also been turned to business enterprises. They have been turned to opportunity for people to fleece foreign and even local donors. So government has a duty, if you ask me, to regulate how funds are received by these agencies and all of that. So to that extent, again, another perspective, you will say, well, we can't say we cannot regulate or we should not regulate NGOs. But then I think it is good that we are talking about this. It is good that there's public agitation about it. And I will encourage people to speak more about it, to go out and then talk more, so that all of the issues, the negative aspect of the bill can be highlighted and can be debated. But you see, the National Assembly, again, has the power under the law. Under Chapter 5 of the 1999 Constitution, the legislative power of the country is vested in them. They can make law. And also, but of course, this is not to say, again, that we have not been faced with challenges of bad laws or self-motivated or self-interested law, in the past years. Laws that are not necessarily... But again, I want us to look at everything holistically. That is my perspective. I wouldn't say it is bad, and I wouldn't say it will necessarily stifle... It depends on how we manage it. It depends on how we manage it.
Well, the NGOs are claiming that they are already over-regulated at the moment. They said that, there are systems within the system that are actually regulating their activities, from the finance to the security aspect to everything, saying there is no basis for introducing another commission to micromanage their activities again.
Well, yes. To that extent, I want to say yes. We have laws already. This NGO are generally registered, for example, under the Companies and Allied Matters Act 2004, under Part C. They are registered as non-governmental organization or not-for-profit and all of that. And again, you also have the Financial Reporting Council Act 2015, which also applies to them. And of course, there are also security clearance and all of that. Yes, there are regulations, but from what we have seen so far, based on what I said earlier too, perhaps these regulations are not enough. And maybe this is one of the reasons why some people think we should have a dedicated law or a specialized law dedicated to this aspect of our society. And in saying all of this, I'm not mindful of the fact that, the NGO and the CLOs, they are, very robust, essentialities in a democracy. We can't run a democracy successfully without having them. And some of the issues that have affected government policies have actually been pushed by some of them. So I'm saying that we really need to strike a balance here. For me, I think there is a need for regulation, honestly. That is my view. And legally speaking, the National Assembly so far has not gone outside, its powers under the law to do that. And I think the civil, the public too, we are doing our own part by talking about it. And I expect that people will go there today, to be part of the public hearing, so that all of these issues can be taken together. But honestly, I think there is a need for regulations. And if there are issues to address, let us identify those issues. Then we can deal with those issues. But we cannot, in my own opinion, throw a blanket, condemnation and say, oh, the NGOs have been turned to business. I don't want to try mentioning names. And even individuals, the NGOs, some of them, and even individuals who have benefited massively, they receive foreign donations or funds from foreign donors. And these funds have been converted to personal uses. Of course, there are criminal laws to deal with all of them and all of that too. But then if you have a specialized law, you can call it a one-stop shop. It would make it easier for people to really tackle those who have done this otherwise, institution to, a personal business enterprise.
All right. Well, thank you very much for giving us, part of a legal explanation, really, on this particular matter. This one, we appreciate you giving us benefit of your experience this morning. Thank you. Thank you very much, sir. Mr. Latif joined us live on the line from University Town of Ileife. He's a legal practitioner there. But then, just because of our time, let's just bring in for some few minutes the executive director of One Life Initiative, Mr. Shola Faguruse. Will be joining us shortly live on the 9. Let's just get a hang of what he makes of all of also before we open the phone lines for you. Thank you so much for joining us right here on Frank Talk on Rave 91.7, Mr. Faguruse.
Hello, good morning.
Thank you very much for joining us. Well, quickly, because of our time, just tell me, well, there's been debates and controversies trailing this particular bill. I spoke to a lawyer who said that he believes that the civil society space should be regulated. He said there are people amongst you who have turned this particular otherwise good venture into a personal profit, making venture and a business concern. That for this reason, the NGOs should be regulated.
Absolutely. I agree with your lawyer contacts that the civil society space actually needs to be regulated. The joke to say that, look, there are individuals that, run platforms that you call NGOs, but what actually exists are actually NGIs, non-governmental individuals. But nevertheless, the truth is, at this particular moment, trying to set up another commission, trying to put together another structure is not the appropriate thing to do. There are already institutions. If you ask me, one of the recommendations I will make in a country like ours is to say, look, I think we need to go on, suspension for, for the Senate and for the House of Representatives. We have so many laws. The real problem is implementations of this law. The fact that NGOs in the first place are even supposed to register with the Corporate Affairs Commission. In terms of your finances, you're supposed to register with the Economic Financial Crimes Commission as well. There are already institutions, there are regulations. You can't say because one or two NGOs or quite a number of NGOs are actually engaged in this, for instance, and then you say you actually want to come up with a commission that will stifle the activities of other well-intending non-governmental organizations. The idea is not just to regulate NGOs. You're looking at regulating civil society organizations. You're looking at regulating community-based organizations. For crying out loud, I think the government even needs to be responsible to the point that we can begin to talk about phasing out the existence of NGOs. NGOs, because government is not doing enough in the first place. Just look at the entire landscape and then take out the picture of several of the other activities that non-governmental organizations are doing. And, in terms of even there are several individuals who on their own engage in charitable activities. How do you classify that again? There are individuals who run projects, who, people who are not discerning enough to understand how the space of non-governmental organization work will say, oh, that person is actually running an NGO. But again, it's just to say, look, I want to give back to society. There are already regulations. You are supposed to register with the CAC. You are supposed to file your returns, with the CAC on an annual basis. If there's anything that has to do with financial crimes being committed, such a person should actually be reported to the EFCC. And again, they make it sound like, NGOs just walk into some places, just pick up funds without any form of regulation. If donors are giving money to you, they have stringent, rules and regulation you have to follow. You have deadlines in terms of when you have to send in reports. You are sending narrative reports to a particular person. Another person is looking at your financial report. And some of them even tell you that you cannot destroy for at least 4 years.
But how come all of those rules and these regulations talking about don't catch or don't affect some of those ones that are giving the civil society and NGOs a bad name?
Are there quack doctors in Nigeria? Yes. Okay. Are there lawyers who actually defame, the legal profession in Nigeria? Yes. Would you, because of that, say that you actually want to come up with another regulation to say how you moderate what happens, within the medical profession? What the government needs to really talk about, really, even if we have to start talking about it, is to say, look, can you guys come together and look at your modus operandi on our own end as well? We will also make sure that what needs to be done in terms of, institutions, in terms of, you regulating the space, in terms of you registering what you are supposed to register, in terms of getting identity for these individuals actually happens in the first place. You want to think about, several of the other things that would also happen as the fallout of this. You want to think about the job loss, for instance. And again, this is the same National Assembly that was talking about giving themselves immunity. This is the same National Assembly now that is saying that, look, it looks like the heat is actually reaching out, getting on them in terms of, several of the activities that NGOs are are engaging in. Thanks to NGOs, for instance, we're beginning to ask questions to say, how much do you guys even get on an annual basis? How much is your salary? Something they've kept sealed lip over. Okay, so I don't really think that in the first place, this NAS is actually in the best position to begin to actually engage on platforms like this.
All right.
More importantly, this bill is about gagging what actually exists in terms of non-governmental, especially those that are engaged in issues around governance, and policies in this country.
All right, well, Mr. Faguruse, I'm afraid I have to let you go at this point now because of our time. We have to bring you back again and talk more about these really as events unfold on this particular development. Thank you so much for joining us right here on Front Talk. Thank you so much. Mr. Shola Fagrisi is the Executive Director of One Life Initiative, joining us live on the line here. We have on the phone lines for you to join us. Let's have your own what do you make of this particular debate within the NGOs and National Assembly? Quickly, 0806 867 6165, 0806 867 6165 and 0902 427 3808, 0902 427 3808 and 0905 648 7177, 0905 648 7177. Let's begin to take the calls. Hello, good morning. That dropped. Hello, good morning. Hello. Okay, well, let's see. We have messages also. Hello, good morning.
Hello, good morning.
What's the name? Where are you calling from?
Alarik is calling from Oshogbo.
Mr. Alarik, we'd like to have a contribution in 30 seconds.
Yeah, thank you very much. You see, this topic that we are discussing this morning is a good thing, and I want the National Assembly to work speedily on the implementation of the law. There are so many NGOs who have turned that golden opportunity to enrich themselves without anything to show for it. If I don't want to mention names.
Don't bother mentioning names. All right, thank you. Hello, good morning. That dropped. Let's see messages on WhatsApp. But quickly before we return to Mr. Idowu and take his final remarks on the program this morning. This message from Oladele from Oshogbo. Why should government regulate the organization it never financed when we have the CAC having the power to issue and seize license? That's poke nosing. Thank you very much. Let's take this call. Hello, good morning.
Hello, good morning.
What's the name you're calling from?
I'm Gary Adeoye, calling from Oshogbo.
Thank you, Mr. Adeoye.
As a development practitioner, the role of the NGOs in Nigeria cannot be underestimated. And the reason why these people are really concerned about this particular bill is as a result of some NGOs that are tracking the activities of the extractive industry. That one is not known to most of us that are clamoring now that this bill should go ahead. You know, it's like they are now digging deep into how they are managing the money that comes in from the oil industry. Then another fact is that someone said we were getting the NGO people were collecting lots of funds from the foreign donors. I want to dispel this because as a rumor, because recently I was part of a team that analyzed what comes into the NGO world in Nigeria every year. It's less than 1% of our annual budget.
All right, because of our time, we just have to go here. Well, someone is also disagreeing with, on Facebook, Omoyeni Janet is saying, not in a situation where an appeal court is powerless and everything is lopsided. I think he's talking about the bill also. Let's take the final call. Just before the official Barbarian Day, also on Facebook, is saying there are more serious issues to be attended to than these mundane NGO regulation. The National Assembly should work more on the economy. Barbarian Day from Sure, thank you very much for that. And let's take these the last call here. Hello, good morning. Okay, well, that dropped. Let's get back to Mr. Idowu now. My producer is saying we have not much time on our hands. Well, your final remarks on the program at this morning.
Thank you very much. I think with what we've discussed this morning, Nigerians can read between the lines and look at the interventions of the NGOs in Nigeria. We can't overemphasize it. The NGOs have come in place to really assist the government, and I think trying to regulate them now, it will not augur well. It will close that civic space, and then a lot of people will begin to feed it. Like Shola said, the truth is this: do we have quack doctors? Yes. Now, what do you do to quack doctors? Can we do the same thing now? Strengthen the existing law, root out the people that are not, that are not genuine. But to now say you close the whole civic space all because some elements are bad, no, I don't think that is the right thing.
We'll leave it at that. Thank you very much.
So we need to really do much.
Okay, Mr. Bukola Ido, who is Executive Director of Kimpact Development Initiative, a very vocal member of the NGO community right here in Osun State. We thank you so much for joining us on Front of this morning. Well, this debate will continue definitely. The public hearing is today and tomorrow, and as expected, we expect that there will be more developments coming out of this. We definitely have to revisit this issue and look at it one more time. We'd like to apologize because we couldn't take much of your calls and your messages because we just had to speak to a different interest on this particular matter. On behalf of the team and executive producer Femi Adefila, my name is Femi Olanipekun, asking you to have for yourself a great day. Good morning.
Imagine the sun without heat. Imagine water without wetness. Imagine the sky without the stars. Imagine movement without motion. Imagine Oshobo without Aro. Imagine Inyo without Eforiro. Imagine Ocean without Rave. Just imagine. Rave 91.7 FM would define every moment.
Papa, mama, make you not listen to me. For your building materials and original title. Now, don't be